And welcome to Tales from the Tips. If you're catching us on YouTube, make sure you give us a like and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you drop a comment below. We love to hear from you. You can always download Tales from the Tips wherever you find your favorite podcast, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and of course on the Odyssey app. Just head to the Google Play or podcast icon there on your Apple device and download Tales from the Tips. Hit that subscribe button and enjoy. I'm DA. Normally I say I'm alongside 15-year tour caddy Mick Middlemo, but Mick's on vacation. So I decided I'm going to bring in a good friend. He is the executive director of the Tour Championship, Mr. Alex Urban. Welcome.
Thanks for being here. I don't have as good of an accent, and I only caddied one summer, so my credentials.
You're
are
already
different.
better off. Yeah, you're already better off. We're just going to be a couple guys talking about golf, both inside, outside the ropes. Looking forward to talking a little bit more about the Tour Championship this upcoming year. Good to see you. You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's grip it and rip it. So, Alex Urban, how are you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. We're at the beginning of 2025 here. It's
Right.
golf season started, which is always good. This was the second year we've had the kind of calendar start back for the PGA Tour, so it's nice to kick off the season in Maui and at the Century, and we're off and running.
So we're going to touch that because you have a long history with that tournament that kicks off our season. How have you been personally? And you know what, we'll do a little bit of a bio on you. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm good at doing
Please.
that. And Mick does that all the time. He interrupts, so don't worry.
Perfect.
So currently the executive director of the Tour Championship, going
Correct.
into your fourth Tour
Correct.
Championship.
Yes.
Okay. Before that, you were the executive director of the Century Tournament of Champions.
I was.
Out in Hawaii. We'll
Yep.
touch on why you decided
Special
to
place.
move from Hawaii to Georgia, but we'll go there. Before that, general manager of the tournament, and then started with the tour in marketing communications.
You got it. You nailed it. Started in 2013.
Husband, father.
Husband, father. I have a coming up on 16-month-old baby girl, Lily, at home, and my wife, Jamie.
You already have a club in her hand?
She's sorta. She's got like the kind of plush baby golf club, but she plays with golf balls a lot. We have kind of golf balls lying around, so I will say she doesn't like to watch. I mean, it's a good thing. She doesn't like fixate on the TV unless we have golf on, in which case she will lock in.
Fantastic.
And so I'm like, yeah, she's great.
She's dialed in
She already
already.
gets it because she doesn't really have a choice. So
Yeah.
it's a good thing that she'll like that because, again,
I'm
she's
still
going to be forced to watch it a lot.
I'm still trying to get my ballet dancer to switch and start playing golf. She shows interest, and then we get into ballet season and forget it. And that's, by the way, almost all year round. So.
Yeah, I'm. She's gonna like what she's gonna like.
Yeah.
I mean, she's gonna be exposed to golf certainly.
Oh, yeah,
and
she
other
has.
sports. My wife's a diehard sports fan. She's from Chicago, so she's a big Bears fan, and poor Lily has to watch a lot of Bears football. And,
So we tease Mick. Mick moved here from Australia to Chicago. He claims he's not a Bears fan, but I claim that he is.
Fair.
He won't accept it. He claims he's a Falcons fan. So we'll dive into that. By the way, he beat me in our picks this year for the NFL.
Well, it's funny. I was listening to some of the episodes before
Yeah.
before you took a break, and I know you were doing some picks, and
Yeah,
it's funny to hear the takes from Week 5 of the NFL through the end of the season, and just kind of see how it plays out.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like you just can't predict.
Well,
That's what makes the NFL such a great league.
I mean,
is-
Sam Darnold is the one that
That was-
and then the one that I still kind of jab Mick is the Buffalo Bills because he buried them early. They
look pretty good.
And they look really good.
They look pretty good.
They looked really good against my Lions a few weeks ago. So
yeah. The Lions look pretty good themselves.
legit.
Yeah.
It's weird. Still a weird feeling. Okay, I got to ask you though. As we get ready, Atlanta is a hometown for championships. Obviously, yours is one on an annual basis. We've got the national football, the college football
We do.
championship. Are you pulling for that school?
This
and
is
you
a-
know that
this is
from
an
where
easy.
I'm from.
This is an easy question for me.
Yeah.
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio,
Yeah.
so
Uh-huh.
I grew up a Buckeye fan.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of games. I've
This is why I don't know
I've
how
been
we're
to
friends.
I've
You know, I
been
don't
to,
know this.
and I hate the Detroit Red Wings too. So
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I apologize for that.
Yeah.
So I grew up going to Buckeye games, Ohio State, Michigan games. We went to both of the. It's funny because Ohio State just played Texas, but we went to the games in 05-06. That was Vince Young and Colt McCoy then the following year for Texas, both in Columbus and in Austin. So yeah, I think I'll be pulling for the Buckeyes for my old man.
I think so.
And my good friends back home. But I will say it's funny. I went to Clemson, so we have an interesting relationship with the Buckeyes over the last decade.
I was going to say
played some kind of bad blood games.
Yeah,
and
Dabo
made some
familiar
comments,
with those.
and so it's funny. It's been an interesting. And I went there. I was like, we'll never play that much, and then it has turned out to be quite different.
Now, your wife is a UGA grad, right?
Oh, I went to UGA for grad school. So I'm Clemson and UGA. My wife went to Illinois State. Go Redbirds.
Okay. Interesting. Well, there you go. That's a new one.
She's Illinois through and through.
She is?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's like one of our buddies, Mr. Parla. We mentioned Parla a lot on the show just because he's somehow tied to all of this. So, so I'm torn on Monday night because I grew up obviously hating that school.
Yeah,
obviously in Columbus,
as you should.
I'm still basking in the glow from the Saturday after Thanksgiving, still for the fourth time.
I have a good friend who, the Buckeye fans, when they lose, they don't like losing to Michigan.
Yes.
Same way. I mean, you guys endured that for a lot of years there.
Yeah, there was a stretch,
and you finally exercised those demons. And he was like, I don't even care that we're in the playoff. And I said, dude, if you win a national championship,
you're gonna care.
You're going to care. So I've been kind of giving him a hard time every time they keep winning. I said, it's a real shame you can't even celebrate this thing.
Yeah.
Since your season's ruined back in Thanksgiving weekend. And he's like, Natty might change the narrative.
He's getting a little bit better.
Just a little bit. But I'm gonna keep ribbing him because it's fun.
Second to that school
is Notre Dame. Yeah.
I grew up despising Notre Dame. Now, I grew up in an era just like you. They were the kings. I mean, I still remember the Catholics versus Criminals game against Miami. I kind of have declared this as Catholics versus Criminals too. But it's
you would.
Of course I would.
Yeah, fair.
But I'm torn, and here's why. You ready for this?
Yeah, please.
We're in the heart of SEC country. Down here.
We are.
All we hear about is SEC. There's a small, and I mean small, part of me that is pulling for that team to win it so that we can say that the Big Ten has back-to-back years of owning the national title.
Which that had to have been a long time.
It's been a long time.
I don't know. I don't
think it's happened in college football in the current format.
No, certainly not.
Since we're
talking like 70s, 60s, probably when. Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
so that's fair.
And then you had two different polls, and you had, Michigan still got
split
robbed.
National championships.
Yeah,
and
97,
all that kind of stuff.
Nebraska, Michigan, whatever.
Marcus Freeman has made that team pretty likable. I have to say, we've played Notre Dame a few times. Clemson has over the last decade, and they're much easier to like with Marcus Freeman as the coach. Seems to do it the right way.
So it's funny because I literally having this conversation yesterday in the office. A buddy of mine is literally he is a Bears fan. He's pulling for Marcus Freeman to become the Bears' next head coach.
That's an interesting one. I mean, college coaches in the NFL. That's a tough.
I told him.
It's not an easy jump.
Yeah.
And the guys that make it work, like a Pete Carroll, he had some NFL experience before he went to college, right? So it's.
But it's funny because I look back. Now I have to really kind of hone in. I'm not the Notre Dame expert, but since Holtz left, there really hasn't been an established coach. It's like almost Notre Dame became a stepping stone program. And
Brian Kelly was there for Brian was there for a long time, right?
That's true.
I mean, 10, at least 10 years.
10, I think. Yeah, I think
that move surprised everyone.
Yeah, but these are the ones that I'm sitting there going, man, you're really saying that you would take the Bears job over being at Notre Dame?
I think that's an interesting question. If I'm Marcus Freeman, I'm at Notre Dame for 25 years.
I'm not going anywhere.
No, I wouldn't leave that job.
Especially if I'm making.
He's winning.
Well, and think about the payday that
South
Notre
Bend,
Dame's
Indiana,
getting right now.
Probably doing just fine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I imagine life's pretty good.
They're not sharing any of the
I
revenue.
imagine life's pretty good for Marcus Freeman. Yeah.
So. Well, okay. So before we get into some of the, I kind of shared some questions back and forth before. I want to kind of get your thoughts a little bit more on what's going on. Obviously, we're 2 tournaments in. Your thoughts on the Century? I mean, Hideki going minus 35.
So I know the golf course a lot. So I've spent a lot of time
Yeah.
in Maui. I was lucky enough to live out there for 4 years,
Okay.
running that event. And I've played it a lot of times, and I've seen all different times of the year when you play that golf course, because the weather in Hawaii is relatively predictable based on the time of year. Though January, I would say, is one of its most kind of unpredictable times. And so you get windy days, you get calm days, there's a certain direction of wind. The tree here, Mark Rolfing talking about the trade winds.
Yes, yeah.
And the trade wind direction is how the golf course is designed, because it blows that way like 300 days a year, 320 days a year.
Got it.
Those 40 or 50 days when the Konas come the opposite way, it just plays really different. You get these par 4s that play for the tour guys, a 350-yard par 4 that downwind is playing 270, and they're hitting 3 woods to the green.
Right.
And so I think you had some Kona winds this year and some lighter winds. And when that happens at a golf course that's as wide open as that golf course is, like it's not a hard place to hit fairways.
Yeah. Wide fairways too.
They're wide.
Yeah.
They're wide, and the greens are big.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of slope in them, and you got to figure out how to putt them. They're pretty grainy comparatively to like an East Lake or wherever you might play on tour. So I think there's a learning curve. You see the guys. Hideki's a perfect example. He's kind of scratched winning that tournament a few times.
Okay.
And then once it all comes together,
So not a surprise for you.
not a surprise to see him.
Yeah.
Win the tournament. I think he would have probably been at top of a lot of people's lists at the beginning of the week. Has played well there. Has played a bunch of times, or that he went that low. I mean, you can go all the way back to Ernie Els set the 2-par, the scoring record back in the mid 2000s at Kapalua.
Yeah.
And I think Cam Smith did the same thing a few years ago. I mean, it is a place where if the wind is doing what it needs to do for those guys, they can make a bunch of birdies. I think he birdied half of his holes or something like that.
I was going to say.
Can you imagine? I can't imagine. I try to keep track of my birdies every year, and if I can birdie one hole around, that's like
I'm happy.
And I'm a single digit handicap. Like these guys are insanely good at golf, and so that was a nice way to start the year. I think could be a big year for Hideki. He's always pretty darn good.
So that is good. I'm going to ask you, because obviously coming off of the Sony last week. You've got a big role to play when you look at the FedEx. Who do you see? Give me. Actually, let's do it this way. Give me who you think is going to be hoisting the cup in East Lake in August.
It's a lot of golf between now and then.
It is a lot of golf, and a couple of the big names haven't even teed it up yet.
No, and there's a few that are playing this week. I think at the American Express. So Justin Thomas is one. Who I'll say, he kind of. A couple years ago had a tough season, and then last year showed some signs of getting better, kind of snuck in the field at East Lake, which was great. Obviously he's won some big events. He's won FedEx Cups. He's won the biggest things you can win at the PGA Tour. Yep. So I'm looking for a good season from him. Okay. I think it'll be interesting to see how he can. He's a new father, which is fun, and I think he was fun to watch him talk about in his press conference about having the family out west because they play. He'll play.
They're going to be out.
He'll play a few tournaments out there. So JT's one that's always on the list. You gotta have to lead with Scotty, right?
Sure.
I mean, the season that he put together last year was top 5 season.
I was about to say,
and I'm including Tiger seasons. Of the last. 25
I think it's the
years.
second best behind Tiger's 2020.
It's hard to. It's hard. 2000.
2000.
And Tiger had a couple. That was a 10-win season. He had some 9 and 8, and VJ won 9 or 10 times in there one year.
That was a top heavy.
You had the big
tour
four back then.
Yeah.
It was Tiger, VJ, and Ernie
Phil,
Els and Phil.
Yeah,
and occasionally Retief Goosen would win the U.S. Open.
Right.
Like a lot.
Show up on.
That guy,
show up for the major.
I just don't think that guy feels pressure. Like something about.
Yeah.
He was struck by lightning as a kid.
I think so.
And there was just something about his brain just doesn't feel pressure, so those greens don't bother him at all.
It doesn't phase him at all.
It sounds nice. I have whatever the opposite of that.
I'm scared
affliction.
of the rough.
I have whatever the opposite of that affliction is with my golf game. So Scotty, I think, and he's made a putting switch, which I think is interesting. He switched grips at the Hero.
Yep.
And here's a guy that, ball striking wise, his numbers.
And he still went out and win.
His ball striking numbers were Exactly. His ball striking numbers last year and for the last few years have just been eye-popping, like insane.
Yeah.
And he's been putting. Last year, I would say he putted well, but not exceedingly well. And so if he started to become one of the better putters on tour, I think it's not a stretch to say that he could do what he did last year again, or maybe even better. So you got to lead with Scotty. I would certainly.
So that was Mick's pick to win it.
That's a pretty good pick.
Yeah,
pretty safe.
I told
pick.
him he was being safe.
It's a safe pick, but like, look, it's like remember when they used to do Tiger versus the field at majors back in the day, and it was like Tiger's the safe pick. I'm like, well, yeah. He wins a lot. So what do you want? I mean, obviously Rory.
Yeah,
I think it'd be interesting to watch him. He came so close in so many events last year, like so many. It'll be curious to see, early in the season, is there some momentum? Can he close the door at a tournament or two, and maybe that turns into the opposite kind of a year where instead of a bunch of close misses, it's a bunch of close makes. He's won tournaments in all kinds of ways, front running, coming from behind. And those kinds of players are the guys that can win a lot.
That is my pick, by the way.
Rory?
Yes. And actually, I said, I think, and just listening to Rory talk, but also I think now that TGL is up and running, I think that little bit of business pressure is off of his plate. Now that it's up and running.
Yeah.
I think he's got his personal life back in order. I mean, he had a rough year from that perspective. And I think as both you and I, as husbands and fathers, we know that personal life does play effect into your business life. That doesn't matter. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I think he gets it done, first of all, in Augusta.
Ooh, I love that. That would be a great story.
I think he does.
That would be a really cool story.
Yeah.
Well, again, every year we have a bunch of guys going for the career slam. You got him trying to win at Augusta to complete it, and I think Spieth needs the PGA Championship.
Correct. Yeah.
So like those are always fun. I guess technically you got Phil with the U.S. Open. We'll
see if he's going to be there.
Yeah.
I think they're going to. I think
we'll see.
Yeah.
But I think Rory, that would be a really cool story to see him pull it off at Augusta. I mean, shoot, that was supposed to be the first one that he won back in 2011 when he made the turn with a big lead and hit that snipe hook left on 10, and everyone thought that was going to be a huge issue for him. And then that was my first golf tournament I ever worked, was the U.S. Open at Congressional.
Okay.
2011. He won by 8 shots.
Yeah.
I mean, that was never close.
That tournament was over.
He blew everyone away.
Yeah.
And obviously has gone on to do great things, but he's still young. He and I are about 10 days apart in age, so he's young. He's
you're
got plenty of good
you're
years
close
ahead
to
of him.
Rory.
Yeah.
I've got Tiger by almost a year.
Okay.
So I figure when I was playing high school golf, it wasn't cool. By the way, there was some guy lurking in the background named Tiger Woods that was winning some U.S. amateurs, and then all of a sudden, I think it was my junior or senior year. All of a sudden, these guys that were showing up that were pretty, popular in school back at that time, all of a sudden were trying out for golf tryouts. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, this is, we're not part of the cool club,
Tiger did a lot of heavy lifting into making golf cool.
Thank you, Tiger.
Yes. We will thank him many, many times over.
Yeah.
He's the only reason why I ever picked up a golf club when I was a kid.
So who do you think, now for me, last year, I think JT was one of those. I don't want to say it was a surprise to see him at East Lake. I think just the way his season started and then being able to make it there. Christian Bezuidenhout is one that I love that guy. I've gotten a chance to meet him. He's we partner with the Arthur Blank Foundation for stuttering here, and he's the ambassador.
Of course, yeah. He obviously had the issues as a kid with drinking the poison.
Yeah,
it was wild,
crazy
absolutely
story.
Crazy story. I know I just mentioned Retief getting struck by lightning.
Yeah,
this one's I think crazier than that.
Almost died.
Yeah, and really cool, and to go through that kind of challenge in your life and come out the other side as a good professional athlete.
Yeah,
pretty cool. One that requires the most precise neurological. I mean, golf. It doesn't get more.
I was going to say your
requirement of precision than golf.
You're
pretty cool,
and you have to be mentally locked in the entire round, especially on the course setups that you guys have.
Well, those on tour, I think that's the thing. Like the margin between the guys that win and the guys that miss cuts, it's 3 shots around, 4 shots around. And, you think every round of golf you've ever played, if I'd have just done this, and that, you picked up 6 or 7 shots.
Right.
If you do that on PGA Tour, you're the difference between not having your card and being Scotty Scheffler.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's razor thin, and it's all mental.
Yeah.
You have to be locked in. You got to deal with the bad. Everyone hits bad shots.
Yeah.
You got to deal with the bad ones. And
so that's the funny part, because if you've ever gone to an actual tournament and watched it, now I've been fortunate. You and you've had us as a guest for several years, and I appreciate it. But just growing up in and around the game, it was like watching it. You could see these guys hitting just some horrendous shots that you'd see actually out on the golf course in your own foursome.
Yeah,
but they just don't show them on TV.
Exactly. Scotty Scheffler, I remember watching him hit a cold shank at the President's Cup in Charlotte in 20.
Well, he shanked that one out of the bunker on
2022. Yeah, and then he got up and down and hit it to 2 feet on 9, and
there's the difference.
And like
there's the difference.
That's
for
not
you
how
and I.
that's not how we react to
Yes.
that. Like, and I think it's the perfect example. Like a guy like that hits bad shots. Tiger certainly hit many bad shots.
Oh yeah,
many bad shots. But I think that statistic that I love is bounce back. How many times do you follow a bogey with birdie or better?
Yep.
And those are the guys that
they're winning.
Yeah, and I think that's Scotty's strong in that. Tiger's strong in that. Rory's strong in that. Other guys, I'm just thinking about Ludwig.
Yeah.
Oberg.
Oh, he's.
I mean, if you could choose anyone's just overall golf game, I don't think anyone would choose anyone different. It's just he's tall. He hits it a mile. He's quick.
He reminds me of Ernie. Like, like when I was, because high school, I followed 2 players. I played Ernie and Freddie. Loved both of them.
You like smooth golf swings.
Boom Boom was
both those guys.
I mean, when Freddie won it, I was a junior in high school when he won the Masters, and I just just his demeanor, his cool, calm. He was the cool guy out on and just that smooth, and he just would launch it. Now Davis was out there. I mean, Davis Love, I think, was probably the longest player on tour at that time.
Yep.
But just watching these, but now I look at Ludwig and I look at just what he can do with a golf ball.
It's crazy.
And that swing is just so
repeatable.
So
you saw
pure.
it in the TGL.
Oh.
I thought it shined through pretty well.
Yeah.
That was what I thought was really cool about that first broadcast is I think it showed you the good players hit good shots and they won.
Yep.
Like that's what you want, right? You want true competition.
So I'm glad you bring up TGL because we're a couple episodes in now when you and I record this. Now we're going to try to drop this as a special episode since I don't need to worry about Mick being here. Forget that you're a part of the tour.
Yep.
As a fan, what are some of your positives and any takeaways that you give back and say, man, I wish this. I personally, for me, I've been disappointed that both matches have been blowouts.
Well, yeah,
but you can't control that.
You can't control that.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be some level of there's a learning curve to the whole thing, and these guys are competing in that medium and format for the first time, so it's going to take them a while to figure out how to score.
Yep.
You got to play in a couple of matches, get the feeling, get the flow. They'll get a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
They'll hit better shots. Though there've been some pretty darn good shots hit on both the simulator and the chipping, which I think is really cool. Actually, I think the chipping and the putting is, I would say. So I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and it would get cold this time of year. You're not playing any golf. I actually worked at an indoor golf, like one of the early
simulator.
Oh,
a simulator.
Sim,
wow.
like what these. There's a whole bunch of these type of places now. The in-town golfs and the 5-iron golfs and all these Top Golf does an indoor thing. There's all these different things, and so it was an early version of this. It had 5 simulators in it, and so I played a ton of simulator golf. A lot. I've played hundreds of rounds of simulator. I mean, I was working, but I was also playing.
Yeah,
I was in high school.
That's a perk of the job.
It was great. Yeah, it was awesome. And so I've always enjoyed simulator golf. For me, it was, yes, I've hit in domes for sure. But I always thought it was a really good way to keep your game sharp and during the months when you couldn't play. Yeah. One of the reasons why I moved from Ohio, so I could play golf more months out of the year. Yeah, correct. Yeah. And so to me, I thought this whole TGL concept, I thought, okay, if you're basically taking the simulator concept and let's make it the coolest version of what that technology could be. And the fact that, I think it's wild. They're 30 yards away from this thing, and it's this mega giant screen.
It's so cool.
And the problem with screen golf has always been the putting and the chipping is kind of, you're putting into a screen. Are you really reading break?
It's inaccurate.
Yeah, and so their solution with this rotating green with hydraulics to change the, it's fascinating and it's really cool. And I think. I was curious to watch what the flow would be like on the telecast going from the hitting to the putting and chipping. Like, would it be clunky? Would it be? And it hasn't been clunky at all. Like The light shines down from the ceiling right where the ball needs to go. They're placing it. They're chipping it. The shot clock's going. It definitely feels like it moves, which I think is a huge positive after 2 weeks.
So I got to ask you about the shot clock, because Mick and I we've several times on this podcast have talked about slow play.
Sure.
And how do you fix slow play? I'm not a fan of let's throw a shot clock on the guys out on tour. I mean, no offense, they're still playing for a pretty large chunk of money, and that's their job.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could work for 5 hours a day for 4 days a week, I'd probably be a pretty happy guy if I was getting paid that kind of money. I don't need anybody to put...
You got to perform,
and you got to perform.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So how do you like the shot clock?
I like it for TGL. I think it's great. I think
you don't see it, though, as a...
I think it would be hard to implement. Like, there's just so many groups and so many guys, and how do you... There's not a referee with every group on a PGA Tour event. There's not... I mean, you think about it, there's so many different groups.
Yeah.
That's not how it... There are X number of rules officials that help as needed. I think it would be tough to implement a shot clock.
Put your executive director hat on.
Yeah, I will say, like, as for my hat, typically we don't... My group deals with most of the stuff outside the ropes.
Yeah.
We have a whole rules tournament directing staff that is adjudicating the tournament inside the ropes, and they're making sure that rules golf are being followed and tee times are being made and all the stuff that need to be done from that perspective that absolutely need to be done. So they would be the ones that would do anything like that from a slow play perspective in the future. I just think it would be tough to do. My guess is if something like that were to be implemented, guys would figure out how to adapt to it.
Yeah.
Like that's, and you think about all the different rules that have changed over the years, and square grooves on wedges and long putters and anchoring and all the things, and a lot of those guys figured out how to adapt to it, and that's what they do. That's why they're so good. I mean, they tinker anyway.
Yes.
When there's no changes, look at Scotty. Like, these guys tinker.
Playing.
They're always looking how to get, because the margin is so small, they're always looking how to get that half stroke better, quarter stroke even. And so I think a funny unintended consequence of something like a shot clock, and I think it'll be interesting to watch TGL, is maybe some of the guys that take a little longer over the ball can't, and maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I know when I'm not playing well, it's because I'm taking too long over the ball. I'm thinking too much.
Yeah.
And so if I could have, I want a shot clock. I need someone to tell me, hey, pull the trigger already.
I find it funny that, because we've got the Atlanta Drive here in Atlanta, and we've got one of the most notorious slow play guys with Cantlay on our squad. I'm going to be curious to see him play next week under that format.
And he's a guy that I think he'll adapt to the format.
Sure.
I really do. I don't think they'll have any issues. There's maybe a couple of times in those first two matches it's gone down towards the end, and it's mostly been on putting because they've been spending a little extra time trying to
learn those
figure
grains.
out what it's going to do, because they're learning what the grain does. But he'll be fine. I think he'll be fine.
See, and that's the funny part, because I was talking with a friend of mine that's really been following this, and Andy does a lot of stuff for us on air here locally, and we were talking about it, and I'm like, they're going to try to get to know these greens. Well, those greens can change.
They can.
Those hydraulics, like, that's the thing. Like, you're never really going to know, like, in some of those pin placements, what that break is really truly going to do, because they can manipulate it. Unlike when they come out to East Lake after a couple of years with these new greens,
they'll know.
These guys are going to know. They'll know where the pin placements are. They'll know where to miss to, exact points.
They study at a level you could never imagine in terms of, and some guys more than others. I think there are some players that are insane in how Matthew Fitzpatrick is the perfect example. I don't know if you've seen him on Full Swing.
Oh, yeah.
Talking about the different ways. I mean, he records every single shot he hits on the range and in competition.
Yeah.
He's been doing that for 10 years or something. And
it's insane.
I can't imagine doing that.
No.
But it's part of what makes him successful, because he can then go back and look and say, well, shoot, I've been missing 7 irons a yard and a half to the right. What do I need to do to fix that, or do I just need to aim different? He can... The level of analysis, it kind of reminds me of, I remember watching The Last Dance, and Dennis Rodman was talking about studying the different spins off the rim for different shooters, and he'd know where to go for rebounds based on all that study. And I had no clue that guys. I mean, it makes sense, but I had no idea that they were looking at it that granular.
You never would have looked at it.
Never.
Yeah.
Never. And that's why he was successful at rebounding. Yeah. Yes, he was physical and knew how to box out and all those things, but it's also the he's the study.
But
of
the early
game.
years of him,
Pretty cool.
He was a wiry little guy that just, I mean, the worm. I mean, literally.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the golf version of that, right? Is studying green, specifically greens. Certainly courses in general, but those greens, that's where those guys win golf tournaments.
Yeah. It was funny. I was listening to a show driving in this morning, and they were talking about Justin Thomas, and Justin has always been one of the top 50 to 120 into the greens, and I think he finished close to the top. His average distance from the pin was 15.4, and so you sit there and you think about it. He's a tour player, top of like the 15.4. I've watched guys in scrambles hit it to 15 to 20 feet, and they're throwing their clubs around, and I'm like going, when you start putting it into those perspectives, like 15 feet's really good.
15 feet's very good, and I do think there's a perception problem that the average golfer has. Like all of us, everyone probably listening to this, unless you're a tour player, should be aiming at the middle of every green because
exactly what they
we
said.
should never aim at a pin. Now, that the closest to the pin statistics for a tour player versus us is a little bit of a misnomer. They tuck some of those pins on those guys. So
Sure.
They're throwing pins behind bunkers, and they're throwing at places where a tour player isn't even going to aim at the pin. So that's going to change your proximity, right?
Right.
If he was 100 yards aiming at a flagstick, I'll bet he'd do better than 15 feet.
Yeah.
But even still, 15 feet is darn good. Like, you typically would take that.
But
and then you got to make
But that's
putts.
15. That's dead center.
Yeah.
No wind. No undulation. Perfectly flat. Like,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of variables that go into that. That's when I heard the statistic, though. I was just like, I was a little bit like, wow. I thought it might have been a little bit tighter, but not. But I'm going now because the other flip side of it is we've seen him stiff it and put it, and dunk them in.
Certainly.
So there's also the 20 to 30 footers that he's left himself with. I just find it so amazing that when you're playing out there, especially we play a lot of scrambles. You and I with
Now
what
and
we
again,
do.
yeah.
With what we do, and I'm just watching guys, and I'm just sitting there going, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We've talked a lot of Justin Thomas on this show, but a few years ago, because I played competitively in high school, and I'm an okay golfer. I can get it around, and I stopped being. You used to get more mad when you're better at golf. It's easier to get mad at yourself, in my opinion.
Yep.
And I remember the day I stopped really getting mad at myself for golf was I was talking to him. I needed him for a press conference. I used to be in the communications department for the tour. Yep. I needed to grab him for a press conference. So I was kind of waiting for him to finish practicing to grab him for a press conference. Can't remember where I was. It's probably I was at his first couple wins in Malaysia. I think we were in Malaysia.
Okay.
And I was just waiting on him because I was going to give him a ride back to the clubhouse, and he was just kind of shooting the breeze with me, hitting the shots, and he was complaining that he hadn't chipped in I think something like 4 days.
Yeah.
He's like, I haven't chipped in 4 or 5 days. I'm pretty rusty. And he was hitting chip shots, and I thought to myself, if this guy feels like he's rusty after not hitting chip shots for 4 or 5 days, and I never practice anymore. Like, I play, and I never go out and practice. Once in a blue moon. Like, how can I ever expect to even be halfway decent at this? Let's just accept what we have every time we go out, and we'll figure it out. And it was a good perspective, because I'm like, if he's thinking that, come on.
I'm just now at the point that the fact that I'm able to get out here and play,
it's just
I'm happy. And most of the time I'm with guys and gals that I really like to hang out with. They're my friends.
Yep.
And we're out having a good time.
Same.
And now I'm kind of like you. I've gotten done with I can't believe I missed that putt. Like, really? Because the last time you were practicing your putting was when?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And you can't expect to be good at anything if you don't practice it ever. And golf's hard.
So I want to kind of move a little bit more into how did you get into the tour? This is more like sometimes like Mick and I will talk about it. Like we'll talk about course management. We'll talk about different things that a lot of us kind of like what we've been just talking about, like just even like distances to the pin from the pros. How did you even get involved with the PGA Tour? What have you always had a love for the PGA or for golf?
Sure, yeah, I mean, yes. So I played golf in high school and loved attending tournaments. I'm the Memorial Tournament in Columbus, Jack's event, and professional golf's a huge part of culture in Columbus because of Jack. It's the home of Jack Nicklaus, much like we have the home of Bobby Jones here in Atlanta. It's there. You have your kind of key golf historical figure there. And so I developed a love of the game back then. And, I was in college thinking about the various things I could do. I graduated from Clemson in 2011. Job market wasn't great, so I figured I'd go to grad school. And so I went to the University of Georgia and got a master's degree in public relations. And during that time, had started doing some stuff. I started a golf blog back when blogging was cool.
Oh, wow.
So I'm a writer by trade. I covered golf for Clemson's newspaper back in the day. And
anyone in particular that you were covering, or just the team?
Just the team. Though the team at the time, I had Kyle Stanley there, who was the National Player of the Year and was a PGA Tour player, multiple winner on the PGA Tour. He was on that team. Ben Martin was on that team, another tour player. There was a little run in there Clemson had. They haven't had any kind of recent tour guys come up, not like certainly like Georgia has.
Yeah.
And I was at Georgia at the same time, like Hudson Swafford and Harris English and Russell Henley and all those guys were there.
The guys that are really
that
now
was cool.
coming into their own on the tour now.
Yeah, and Russ has been good for a long, long time, and he won early and then kind of didn't win for a while, and then it was fun to see him win again. And same with Harris, kind of the same deal. Those guys came out popping early, and then the life on the tour is hard. It's hard to win. So anyways, I made a concerted effort to do some things that I could control.
Yeah.
I'm going to start a blog. I'm going to write about golf. I'm going to try to get interviews, and was able to. I had a guy that played out of the club that I played out of in Columbus, who was the Big Ten champion in golf, played at Northwestern. A guy named Chris Wilson. Yeah. Really good dude. And he had his card for a season and a half or so, played on Korn Ferry Tour for a number of years, has wins on that tour. He's a good player. Yeah. And so he hooked me up with the guy who was the president at the time of the Hooters Tour, that became the NGA Tour and then became the Swing Thought Tour, and they've kind of evolved over the years. So I was an intern for them for a summer, just an unpaid media intern. They paid for my expenses, and it's not a big staff. It's 5 or 6 of us going. We had 140-man fields, 144-man fields with a cut. We're operating a real full-size big boy golf tournament. A lot of fun. I had a blast. That was summer of 2012 when I was at Georgia, and then summer before that, I was an intern at the USGA. So that was when the U.S. Open at Congressional was the first golf tournament I ever worked. And I was a communications intern for them. So that was just me cold applying to an internship that turned into that. And so what I would say is, there's a lot of people, when you think about all the possibilities in sports, a lot of people want to work in sports. Hey, I love golf. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. What are you doing to try to make that a reality? I think that's the piece that people need to. I'm a big make your own luck kind of guy. So I think I was very lucky. So after those, various internships and things, I ended up meeting the right person on a golf course who made the right connection to someone at the tour. That person happened to be Jay. Who was the chief marketing officer at the tour at the time, and had a conversation with him, and was lucky enough to find myself at the tour right out of grad school in 2013. Wow. But if I hadn't done those things on the front end, been there. I would have just been another person that loved the game of golf and wanted to work in golf. Well, that's awesome. But what are you doing? What aptitude are you showing? What other skills are you bringing to the table? Because and this is any sports job, there's 150, 200 people that'll apply day one when the job opens up. So you have to separate yourself from them. So I was very lucky to meet the right person at the right time. That was hugely important. But then again, kind of create your own luck. And so that's how I found myself at the tour in 2013 on our corporate marketing team. I worked with FedEx and Charles Schwab, some of our larger clients, and then moved into our communications team, which was what a lot of my educational background was. I was the editor of my high school paper and wrote for my college paper, and I love media and that background, especially the writing medium, and loved that job. That was awesome. And then I was kind of thinking about what the next move would be if I wanted to do something else, if it was continuing communications. And I worked with a lot of tournaments and a lot of tournament directors, and I really thought that it was something that I would be suited for. Yeah. I really like the work. I love the idea of having one thing that I'm focused on, rather than that was the for my brain. I'm very type B. Okay. And so when things fly around all over the place, and if I can create some order in my life, it's a good thing. So I was working 10, 20 tournaments a year, and trying to keep that straight I pulled it off, but it's a challenge. Yeah. So I was like, man, if I had one thing that I could really focus on. And so I just was very lucky. Timing again, luck
Yeah.
luck presented itself in 2018 for the opportunity to go out to Maui, and they were looking to try to find someone that could go out there and would be willing to go out
I was
there.
going to say it's not.
It's a hard place to move.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. I was in my late 20s, and I didn't have a family, and I was like, sure,
Yeah.
send me. It's a. I had worked
Okay.
that tournament before, so I worked it my communications
Yeah.
years. I'd been there 3 times. I thought, yeah, this place is pretty cool. I could live out here, and kind of, looking at it as a really great next step from a career perspective. Didn't put any expectations on it. Just go out there and do as good of a job as I can do,
Yep.
and see where it takes me. And I was there through COVID and through some challenges, and that was an interesting time to be a person running an event, especially
Yeah.
at a place like Hawaii, which was among the most restrictive.
One of the restrictive states in the country.
And rightfully so, because it was such a small community, and they could like a lot of those island type places, you could control the travel a lot more easily to a place like Hawaii. So learned a lot, and then the opportunity arose to come here, and I jumped on that as well.
Yeah, because the COVID, you guys had already had the tournament in 20,
before
COVID actually started breaking out. So then this was 21 when you were, because the tournament had the Masters in November.
Yes,
which was still bizarre.
Very bizarre.
What was that tournament like in 21?
Yeah, it was it's like a weird combo of I would say it's probably it was the most stressful one that I've done of all the ones I've done, and I say that because it was just had the most unknowns. Yeah, and you just always were worried about, we had COVID bubbles, and we had the amount of work you had to do to make sure the players could even get to Hawaii, because you had to have a negative test so many days before you traveled, and coordinating that with the players and their managers and their caddies, and that group ultimately becomes pretty big. Yeah, you just always worried about, man, what if it goes wrong and there's a huge outbreak?
Did you guys bring them in earlier
stuff
than normal? Or?
No, not particularly, because it didn't really gain you anything. Yeah, and of course it butts right up against the holidays, so you can't ask those guys to come over Christmas. Some of them come. Some do on their own, and that's great. So it was just the unknowns. The unknowns are the worst in events, right? And there's plenty every year. Yeah. In our sport, it's always weather. Even in Hawaii, we had weather challenges at times. But the unknowns of COVID really made that a challenge. And so you're trying to plan for all these contingencies. If this happens, this is what we'll do. And you have to come up with so many of those. Yeah. No different than all the football teams were doing. Okay, if we lose our head coach, who's in charge for the that was happening week to week in college and NFL. I remember that. Like, it was wild. So it was different, but it was also a really interesting time to. I got to know the mayor of Hawaii quite well, and we formed a really nice relationship, and the deputy governor, who's now the governor of Hawaii, and all the people that were in charge of all those policies, and explaining and coming up with the plans as to why what we were doing was ultimately positive and safe. And I'm proud of what we were able to do, because Century, our title out there, was able to. They're unbelievably generous company, and they were able to generate some additional dollars on top of what the tournament does for COVID relief in Maui, and they've done that since the fires out there a couple years ago. They continue to be an incredibly good corporate citizen of the island of Maui, and corporate citizen is almost too formal. It's they're part of that community, and that's pretty cool. So to be part of building that legacy for something on the PGA Tour, much like we do here at Eastlake, and what that means to Atlanta, to me that's the best part of what we do, is able to make these great impacts on the communities while doing something that we love.
And you're hosting a tournament, having amazing, you're giving an opportunity and an experience to thousands of fans, but at the same time you're making a significant impact in the city, that you guys are in. And so you moved out to Hawaii. First role was general manager, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What did that entail from your perspective? Like, obviously a different change from communications.
I was really young. Yeah. And I didn't know what I didn't know, and I was really lucky to work with the executive director who had been there for many, many years, and she was on the verge of retirement. And so worked alongside her, Nancy Cross is her name, and learned a ton about, that I would say those first couple of years, the biggest worry for me, not so much the first year because I was riding shotgun with someone that had done it many years.
Yeah.
It was just like, what's the thing that I'm gonna have forgotten?
Yeah.
That I didn't know was a thing. Maybe not even forgotten. Something I didn't know,
Just
and it's
didn't
gonna
know.
come up.
Yeah, you haven't
and I will say
experienced it.
that second year, I remember someone came up to me because at a typical tour event, like here in Atlanta,
Yeah.
we have a truck. There's all these equipment trucks, and there's equipment reps. So if you're Scotty Scheffler and you ding your driver, they have a new head for you in 10 minutes. They run over to the truck and they screw a new head on your driver or a new shaft, and you can
You're off.
anything,
Yeah.
literally anything. They get it for you immediately.
Yeah.
Well, they don't take those trucks to Hawaii.
Yeah, right.
They don't.
Right.
They have the reps will come and they can do work on clubs, and they'll ship some stuff out there just in case.
Yep.
But what you need is this machine. It's a loft and line machine.
Yep.
And those that golf know, it's the thing that's how you take the head off a golf club and reset a shaft and all that stuff. And one of the players in our field had dinged up their driver, and they said, "Oh, where's the loft and line machine? So the guys can go use it." And I had no clue that we were supposed to have a loft and line machine. And so that was a very busy 90 minutes. And there was a guy that owned a small golf shop on the other side of the island, and he brought his machine over and was happy to help. PGA Tour player.
Yeah.
And just one of those things. That was one of those
Problem
moments. So you're
solving.
like, the job is problem solving overall. Like if you were to ask what we do, that's it. And so the longer you do it, and so now I'm coming up to my 8th tournament in a role like this. There's less and less unknowns, which is nice. There's still plenty of things you don't control, but
we
you have
can
great
talk about weather.
and you have great teams. Like my team here in Atlanta is bigger, so they're seasoned. They know what they're doing. They're wonderful at what they do. They put on the best tournaments in the world, and so you kind of can lean on that a little bit for some peace of mind. But yeah, that first tournament in Hawaii was fun. It was learning what it was like to do stuff like this and talk about the tournament publicly and deal with players and their managers and make sure that they're happy. And easy to do in Hawaii, easy to do in Atlanta. Both tournaments when everyone's going home happy. Especially here. Even if no cut and big purse.
Yeah.
That's a good thing. I'm lucky in that respect. But yeah, it was a pretty big learning curve, and I look back on it now. I'm like, man, that was a lot of trust to put in a kid in his late 20s to go try to figure that out. So I don't take that for granted.
So obviously Mick likes to tell some fun stories. Any fun stories that you can remember from any of your Century days out there that you can
Century?
And it can be on course, off course, some wild, crazy stuff.
It's hard. Like those tournaments are you're so locked in. I'm trying to think of anything kind of specifically. Certainly that loft and line machine one.
That's a great story.
That's definitely one that sticks with me. That
was a learning experience.
That kind of lives in there, and all the COVID stuff. Certainly, I think back to my communications days too. I mean, we had some. If you're just looking for crazy stories, like I traveled a ton, so I would always do. It's good timing because of Sony Open. I worked the one where the fake missile. It ultimately was a false alarm. The missile alert went off.
Yeah.
You do recall that?
I do recall that. It's
basically
funny.
like when your phone gives you
we have
alert.
quite a history with the Sony Open on this show. Obviously,
it gives you the alert. For an Amber Alert or a tornado warning or whatever. And I was in Waikiki when we got the ballistic missile incoming. This is not a drill. All caps.
Yikes!
One of the more ridiculous moments of my life.
Yeah.
That I was in a hotel. I was in a high-rise hotel in Waikiki, and I remember just walking out to my balcony. I was like, "Well, I'm assuming that this is headed towards Pearl Harbor, so I'm going to just go see if I can see it."
Yep.
Might as well. I don't have anything else I can do. Yeah. And then once 30 seconds went by and nothing had happened, I thought, it's probably a hoax of some sort. And I don't know. Maybe it's just modern culture. I just assume everything's a hoax until it's not.
It's hard to believe some things these days.
That was a crazy one, and ultimately ended up being nothing. But that was one of those wild moments that you have. It's just funny stuff. Like JT again. I happened to work a lot of tournaments that he won in Asia because he won his first 2 in Malaysia, and then he won in Korea. And I remember doing the press conferences in Korea. You'd sit behind this big, you'd sit behind the table.
Yeah.
And the media is all out there. Well, there are almost all Korean journalists. So the way it works is the journalist asks the question over the mic in Korean. The translator translates that into English. Justin would answer the question in English. That would get translated back into Korean for the person that would then ask and follow up in Korean, get retranslated in English.
Yeah.
It's a long process.
Yeah.
Necessary and great for an international event. But you end up having like 4 to 5 minutes in between questions where you're just sitting up there. So JT and I used to play Hangman. And that was at the height of we had just beaten them again I think maybe we just beaten them for the first national championship after we lost the first game. And he knew I was a Clemson guy, and he's obviously famously a Bama guy. So we were kind of messing with each other there. So that was fun. So, like when you see those people back there doing press conferences, and you're like, what are they doing? Yeah. Occasionally something as stupid as playing Hangman. Yeah. Just pass the time.
Nice.
Make it look like we're doing something important.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Yeah. I enjoyed that. And
do you know that's how I proposed to my wife?
Hangman?
Hangman.
No way.
Yeah.
Will you marry me as the...
Yeah. We were at an Italian restaurant in Rochester, Michigan.
I love that.
Yeah. Rasheed Wallace and his wife were having dinner
That's funny.
right next to us.
How about that?
Yeah. It was
there you
crazy.
Go. Hangman. That's brings people together.
Look at that. Marriages and then killing time.
And killing time during Korean PGA Tour press conferences.
Awesome.
But yeah, I can't. Century. I'm trying to think of. I mean, really, the COVID ones were the ones that were the ones that stick with me the most. I mean, there's a lot of great memories I have of Hawaii. Hawaii is a wonderful place. It's if you ever have a chance to go and you haven't been, I highly recommend it.
We're still talking about actually having our honeymoon. So yeah, I think
well, seems
Lynn's
like
been out there. I've never
made
it. I've never made it out to the islands.
It's pretty cool. It's different than I expected. A little bit more natural, and it's a great place. Cool, great place.
So, how did you? I mean, obviously, I know a little bit more because you and I are friends, and I've been part of this for a while. How did you? I mean, I know when Allison took the role with the tour champion down at headquarters. What made you want to come to Atlanta, and was there somebody that recommended you, or how did you become the executive director of the tour championship?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Allison has always been a good friend of mine. She was, when I first started in Hawaii, she was right about the time she was starting her role in Atlanta here at the tour championship in as the executive director. Yeah.
And we're talking about
my
Allison
predecessor here.
Yeah, Allison Fillmore. She's now with corporate partnerships.
Still works for the tour.
Yeah,
still
does an amazing job.
Does an awesome job, and it's just, I will say it's certainly a nice thing to come into a scenario after someone like an Allison who has just. I mean, it's like being passed a nice. It's like Ryan Day at Ohio State. You've been given a nice
You've been
program
here you
to
go.
handle. Yeah, exactly. Like you didn't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
And you could use it as a platform to continue to grow it, make it better. So I was in Hawaii. I just finished my 4th tournament. I was getting married in early 2022 and was at the Players Championship. And I just remember, I have a boss.
Yeah.
And he was kind of said, hey, I think Allison may be taking a new job at the tour, and really just asked me if I was interested in it. And I was insofar that it's Maui's a wonderful place to learn, and it's a great event. I love it.
Yeah.
Wanted to take the next step in terms of event stature within the schedule. So, and there are certain events there's not a lot of events that are bigger than what a Century's bringing to the table in terms of what it means.
The best of the best.
And so but like the tour championship, it's hard you're not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Like when that's asked, and for me personally, I knew I was getting married and we wanted to start a family, and my parents live in Greenville, South Carolina, and my wife's family lives in Melbourne, Florida. It was just, and I went to Clemson in Georgia. I thought, okay, I understand this part of the world a little bit. Yeah. I've spent some time in Atlanta going to football games or Braves games or whatever. Yeah. It's like, this would be a cool. There weren't a ton of tournaments that I think I would have said, absolutely, let's do it.
Yeah.
And this was one of them. And so when that was asked, I said, let's do it. And my boss said, I believe in you, and I think you'd be a great person to take the torch here in Atlanta. Yeah. And another piece that I think was really cool, like in Hawaii, I worked really closely with Century Insurance, our title. That's a big part of the job.
Yeah.
And they were awesome sponsors. And I always had heard about how great the sponsors in Atlanta were. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, Southern and Coke, just long-standing sponsors, great partners of the tour, closely aligned with the city, closely aligned with the East Lake Foundation, all the things we try to do from a philanthropic perspective. Yeah. And then onboarding a new sponsor, which is a new challenge as well. We were on that year, 2022, was the onboarding of Accenture.
Yep.
So what a fun new challenge to try to bring someone new into the fold. I'd never managed that many sponsors before, but it helped make the decision easier knowing that I was walking into a scenario with this great support locally for a tournament at a place like East Lake. I had been to the tournament when I was in grad school. We came the year Brant Snedeker won in 2012.
Wow. Okay.
If you look at his, when he hits the putt on what's now the 9th hole, but was the 18th back in the day, I'm in the TV shot, like
get out of
cheering.
here.
Yeah. So like
right,
I knew East Lake.
Leo, we're gonna have to clip that one. We're gonna have to see if we can go find that one.
It's back there. I'm like, you can sort of. I've got a
screenshot
screenshot of it. I'll show it to you.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those. I knew what I was getting myself into a little bit, and that helps make the decision easier. That's why it was so easy to say, let's do it. Let's see what the next challenge looks like, and we've loved it. It's what a great place to live and
I was gonna
have
say.
a baby, and we truly Atlanta's awesome.
How are you enjoying the snow?
Great. Well, I kind of moved away from snow purposefully, but when you get it for a couple of days, it's kind of fun. Like I'm like, oh, okay, I like the first day of snow. Everyone likes when it first snows. It's 6 weeks later when it's just mush in the
black
parking lot at the grocery store, and it's just like disgusting.
Right.
So we kind of skipped all that. Like it's already melted. It's gone.
Except for my backyard.
There are a couple of patches that are kind of hanging on.
And I keep hearing about possibly next week.
Yeah, what is that all about? I saw that too. I'm done now. I'm good.
It had been 5 years because we had moved here. I'm here almost.
That was the one. That was the really bad one. People were all stranded on the highway.
No, I was thankful. That was 2020. Actually, it was before COVID. It was February of 2020. We got about 3.5 inches where I'm at, and so like. The girls kind of were laughing. At that time, they were younger, so they were sledding down our hill and stuff like that. They hadn't seen their snow gear since we had moved from Colorado. So they were like, "Dad, can we? I don't even know if it fits." So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So this one, they were all like, I've got 2 that drive. One's in college, and one was home. And she's like, "So I can't go anywhere." And I'm like, "No, you're stuck."
No, I will defend the city, because people always say, "Oh, these people in the South can't handle the snow." I'm like, well, they have no infrastructure here.
No,
there's no salt trucks. Like the minute there is the breath of snow in Ohio, they will start salting all the roads and all this stuff. They don't have that here. So like, cut some people slack. There's some pretty aggressive driveways in this town. The hills in the city are unlike. I think that was when I first was like, okay, let's move here. Let's look around, and I just didn't really appreciate how hilly and how wooded Atlanta is. Just in general.
The same take I have. It's insane.
Yeah.
The hills around here, just even driving through the city.
Yes.
I mean, it's incredible.
It's hilly place.
Yeah, it's fun to stand on part of your property and watch and look out and be able to see the city.
Yeah, out by 6th Green, 7T, up in that area. We've
one
had
of the highest points.
The ATL Grove up there. We've had a fan area. It's part of the reason why we put it up there is because it's just a cool vantage point. You can see the skyline. You can see a lot of the golf course these days. It's a good spot.
So let's move into that because you, since moving here, you've had quite a few changes out there. You went through quite an extensive remodel project out there last year. Let's kind of go into that a little bit. First, some of the things that you've done. You've helped create that First Tee experience.
Yes.
I know working with the folks at the First Tee Atlanta, but also just that fan experience there. What kind of drove that, and what kind of got you started into thinking along those lines?
Yeah, that our starter lounge, our venue there on the first hole, which is both a private shared hospitality venue, but also public seating up top and covered. Yep. And so we love when we can do that and do something that's for general admission and also help our create some new experiences from a hospitality perspective. I think that was really born from, I remember the first year I was out here. 2022 tournament. We open our gates at 10 a.m. every day, typically do, for tee times that range anywhere from 11:30 to 12:30 to start, depending on the day. And there's a line of 250 people every day at 10 a.m. And it just blows my mind. It's really cool. I'm like, wow, people are lined up. We don't have golf for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they want to go find a cocktail potentially or a drink. They want to walk around, see the course. They want to go to the merch, to the fan shop and see what they can loot that place, and that's those fan shops have become, people go right there.
You have to.
They try to get as much merch as they can get.
You have to, otherwise it's gone.
You do, and so that's become a huge thing. And so we looked at that and said, okay, people are here, so they're clearly we're going to have a good crowd for the first tee time of the day,
Yep.
whenever that is.
Yep.
And that's different than a typical tour event,
Right.
where you might start at 7:45 a.m. and you're going to have the last third of the tee times are going to be really packed, but the first ones are going to be a little lighter.
Yeah.
So we thought, okay, we got 15 tee times starting at 10:30 or 11:30 or 12:30. Let's build something that is, let's get a little atmosphere on the first tee. Let's do a video board. Let's have some intros for these guys. It's make
fun.
it a little
It's
bit
a fun
more
experience now.
It's funny. I was watching TGL the other night, thinking that's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
We
They
didn't
took
have
that idea from you.
We have a little less smoke. Was funny. Somebody, I think it was Serena Williams, a couple nights ago, was saying, golf doesn't have any. They don't have intros, like this.
Yeah.
There's no golf tournament that has this. And I said, Serena, you've not been to the Tour Championship.
Yes, correct.
We got to get her out here so she can see it. We
It
have a
almost-
little less
it-
smoke and a little less theatrics, but we have videos and they walk through the venue,
It's
which
got
is
the
pretty
Ryder
cool.
Cup vibe.
That's and that's
Yeah,
and it's always going to be a slightly different vibe, but with 30 guys, you can and 30 great players, you can highlight them all. That was really the impetus behind that venue. So
Cool.
it's been a great addition.
Yeah.
It's good for that atmosphere. It looks great on TV. It's cool.
It's there's a lot of really cool things that you've been able to do. You mentioned the Grove. That was another new experience. This past year really was the Grove. You did Back Nine Brews the year prior.
We have the So Cool Zone out just over by our fan shop,
which you kind of revamped this past year.
Yep, and we're always looking at how to make that stuff better. A fan experience these days in sports, you just have to do a good job to get people off their couch, because it's so easy to watch sports on TV. You got to figure out how to get them to come out, and we've done a nice job of that. It's fun. We're in the business of fun and putting on fun experiences so that people come out, and whether they're entertaining clients or just having a good time with their family.
Yeah,
that's the job. That's what makes it a fun
You've made
job.
it a very family-friendly event. There's a lot of corporate. I've been to a lot of tournaments. They're very corporate, especially the corporate hospitality. But seemingly, there's a lot. It's fun to see dads with young sons and daughters and moms and just families just wandering around the golf course. I spent a ton of time this past year just wandering the course. Yeah.
Well, and kids get in free, 15 and under to the tournament. Two kids per ticketed adult. So
is that normal, or is that's something...
pretty normal across PGA Tour?
Okay.
It's not normal in sports, but it's normal for the PGA Tour, and that's something we're really proud of. And frankly, I don't think we do a good enough job of telling that story and promoting it, because I think if people really realize, I have 3 kids, all we have to do is buy the 2 tickets for the adults. How great is that? And there's all kinds of options on site for food and entertainment outside of the golf, for kids to, kids, I have one.
Yeah.
They're not always going to sit and stare at the same thing for an hour straight. So you need to switch it up, and it's just a great place to walk around, take the family. The corporate piece is important, and we are really lucky here in Atlanta to have great support. Yeah. Obviously our 3 partners that I mentioned, but all the additional support from the city of Atlanta, that's what makes us able to grow our philanthropic and impact dollars like we have. But I don't think you can create a tournament that has the atmosphere that's conducive for the corporate without the family orientation and you need to have a good vibe on site, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so we really want to do right by the people that are buying grounds tickets to the tournament and general admission. So local food vendors and different activations and
fun
things
little
on
things.
site. Yeah, exactly. So you can come out. We had Coca-Cola did floats this year, and just stuff that you're not going to see if you're just going your normal day-to-day life. So we're always trying to think of the next thing. And that's the challenge for us, is that we get 5 days a year of being open to the public. Yeah. And we try to learn as much as we can in 5 days, and then make whatever changes
get ready
we
for
can.
next year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this year had to have been a challenge with the renovation.
Yep.
What was because obviously when you got here, you already knew about it.
I was told. Yeah, I mean, I was told about it
inherited
on
it.
arrival. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, by the way, and we did it. Funny enough, we did a course. There was a big course project at Kapalua after my first tournament there. So apparently that's my thing.
Yeah.
One tournament to get your sea legs, and then the next.
So wherever
year,
you go next is what we're
I'd like to,
course renovation. Is that
we'll
what
be
I'm
here
expecting?
for? We'll be here
Good.
for a while.
Right.
Yeah, we love Atlanta. It's I think yes, but apparently when I arrived, they make those changes, and this was a massive. This restoration was a big project, and I think what really it was a challenge, certainly.
Sure.
And the biggest challenge, like anything, is just it was the communication of it all.
Yeah.
And it was making sure that Andrew Green, who was in charge of the project, was communicating with Chad Parker, who's the GM over at Eastlake and a wonderful person, great to work with. And that whole team is wonderful to work with. We have such a good working relationship with them that, because look, there's going to be things that change in the field, and once they get the bulldozers out there, it looks a little different than what they thought it would, and that's just the nature of that business.
Yeah.
But we're kind of building. We need to start building the tents while they're finishing up that work. So that overlap was a challenge.
Yeah.
And if we didn't have the relationship that we had, it would have been a lot harder. But thankfully, we were able to communicate, get through make sure no one was stepping on each other's toes, make sure everyone could get their work done. Because ultimately, we all had the same goal, just to deliver a new course at the Tour Championship. And it was successful. So it was, but also reimagining all the different, this hole looks a little different and creates more space on the right-hand side. What should we do? The 17.
Yeah.
Well, we could do some fan area and infrastructure over there, and we did. And I think it worked really well. So it's that kind of stuff that it provided opportunities. It was certainly intellectually stimulating, if not a little stressful.
Yeah.
But it was good.
What are you the most proud of so far that you've been able to accomplish here?
That's a really good question. I would say, and I was touching on the philanthropic work that we are able to do every year, and I'm lucky enough to get to work really closely with the Eastlake Foundation and Illy, who's Illa Mesquia, who's the executive director over there, as much as I was when I was in Maui and all of our nonprofits there. I think, to me, being able to grow tournaments, which I've been lucky enough to be part of tournaments that are kind of on the upswing and trying to make new, so that we can provide more support for the community on an upward trajectory. That I'm really proud of, and being able to do it the way that I operate, which is typically I think life's a little too short than to just treat people nicely, and that's just kind of my MO, and I haven't had to compromise that. And I think that's, if you're asking me what I'm most proud of, that's what I'm most proud of. Is we have a lot of fun doing what we do, and we work hard, and we have tough conversations when we have to, but I try to instill this in the team, is like treating people right and having respect and that kind of stuff. If you can do it that way, then you're doing something right. Yeah. So that's the thing. There's not one thing. It's just kind of being able to go through, and now I've got to being able to do it with a family and figuring that out. Like it is a whole different animal.
Juggling act, isn't it?
Whole different animal. We had her out at the tournament this year, which was the best, and
because that's a lot of hours. Most people don't realize how many hours you're away during tournament time.
Certainly during tournament week, I'm basically living at the office.
Yeah.
Like it's there at 6 a.m., home at 11. Yeah, kind of deal. And the month leading up to that is not quite maybe that every day, but it's close.
Yeah.
And you go through peaks and valleys, and you have parts of the year that are a little bit easier, and holidays are nice. We can kind of unplug, which is good. Yeah. But yeah, I love what I do, and so does our team. Yeah. And so I'm proud to be able to do that and do it well, and be just part of a sport. You get the history of Bobby Jones here. It's Eastlake. It's the Tour Championship, and to be part of a tiny sliver of what that means to the game of golf is pretty cool. So I'm proud of that. Yeah.
Anything new that you can talk of that's going to be ready for this 2025 Tour Championship?
Yeah, we're always looking. Last year after the restoration to the course, I told the team we're not going to bat 1,000 on every new thing we tried, so we're going to try to take that and evolve it. So we'll have fan areas that maybe look a little different. Continuing to try to elevate those, and same with hospitality venues that we do on site, and different activations with Coke Southern, Accenture, and whatever. I think just overall, what you're seeing from the PGA Tour in general is we're trying to listen to the fans. With this fan first mentality right now, and we're trying to have surveys listen so that we can not have any sacred cows and try to decide, okay, what is the best version of all this stuff, and what is the best PGA Tour? Because it's been a busy couple of years in our sport, and for us to continue on the trajectory that we're on, which is, I think, a very good one, we need to keep making sure that it's a place that fans want to tune in and they want to attend. Yeah. And so that's what's driving us. So I know that's a very vague answer to that, but I think
it's a very good answer, actually.
Yeah, like our goal is that if if you come to any tour championship, even if you've been to the last 5, you can see the new things that are happening on site. Yeah. And it's never feels like kind of rinse and repeat, same thing year over year. Because if you're not getting better, then you're getting worse.
Yeah. Well, it's a good way to end, my friend.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
I know we talked about it back. Well, one last thing.
Please.
How did the social media tournament go? Because you guys put that on Wednesday.
The Creator Classic.
Yeah.
Well, it went well enough that I don't know if you saw that they're going to do 3 of them this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
no, I didn't. I've been
telling
so busy doing this.
It's been a busy start to 2025. It went really well. It
Good.
was we were kind of the test case for this idea and concept, which 10 years ago when I started the tour, there's a 0% chance that this would have happened. So this is listening to fans, and we have these creators are a big piece of golf media landscape these days, and it was really cool. It was fun to see a different group of people out there on Wednesday to follow it. I think it was definitely a younger crowd.
Yeah.
And I thought it went really well. And so they're going to do a few of them this year. They're going to bring it back to Atlanta. So we'll do it again. But I think they're going to try to do it at the Players Championship.
Okay.
And they're going to try to do it at the Truist Championship, which this year is going to be played at the Philadelphia Cricket Club.
Yeah.
Which is a really cool place, by the way. Philly Cricket is.
you
get a chance to play golf there, I would jump on that.
Okay.
Golf in Philly.
Yeah.
Really good. Marion, Aronimink, Pine Valley.
Truist being the new partner there for in the Carolinas.
Yep. And then that event will be full time back at Quail Hollow.
Yep.
It's not there this year because of the PGA Championship.
PGA. Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, it went well.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do this. I know we started talking about this at the Tour Championship.
We did.
You looked at me like, you're doing what?
Well, you got to remember, during tournament week, my brain is like, I got to go in a million different directions. So.
Well, I'm glad you could make it.
Thank you.
You're coming back, by the way.
I would love to come back. I love talking golf. This is
we'll get
my favorite.
We'll get you a little bit closer to tournament time, probably right after we get the tickets on sale, probably March usually.
Yeah, I think we're looking at that kind of somewhere in between, whether it's Players or Masters, somewhere in there.
So
March to April timeline.
To wrap it up, I have JT winning the Players.
So JT winning the Players.
So Mick and I, the back nine hasn't released yet. So you and I are having this conversation. I'm going to let they know, our fans, our listeners are going to know that I'm already going to pick JT. I've got JT at the Players, and I've got Rory at the Masters. So I've given away 2 of mine.
Players Championship. Ooh, I used to be the PR guy for the Players, or one of the PR people for the Players. I love that tournament. So
does Scotty go 3-peat?
So I mean, it's hard to bet against Scotty. I'm not gonna. That's that's the safe pick.
That's very. Well.
I'll put Ludwig out there.
Okay. I like it.
Rewards great ball striking. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah. So next time we're on, we'll see if either of us were right.
If we're anywhere close. Yeah.
We know Mick's not going to be right.
Well, that's fair.
He can pick football though. Well, thanks for joining us on Tales from the Tips. Make sure you give us a like and subscribe on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook, X, Instagram. I'm trying to think of where else the Kim, executive producer Kim, has put us. All of our new content, some of our shorts that we're putting out there. Leo's doing a ton of great work behind the scenes. So we look forward to seeing you next time. We hope your drives are straight, your putts are short, and your scores are low. We'll see you next time on Tales from the Tips.